After the success of television, the critical view, and the most popular art, I was looking around for something else to do and began to think about the role of the producer as opposed to the role of the director in film. And so I proposed, I can't remember the original proposal for that book, but it was something to do with the industry and how things are made and who's in charge and that kind of thing, and how do the writers work and so on. And so I proposed that to my editor at Oxford, John Wright, who I must say is a crucial part of this story, because he was the one who said, let's do the critical view. And John was a great editor. We worked together closely, and so I sent him this, and he said, you know, I don't know, but I'm working with another guy who has proposed something similar, Robert Alley at the University of Richmond. Why don't the two of you correspond and see if you've got something going? And the reason he did that was that Bob Alley at the University of Richmond had made inroads to Hollywood via Earl Hamner, who was a graduate of the University of Richmond. And they were friends, and Earl had suggested different kinds of things to him. And so Bob and I came up with the idea for interviewing a number of producers, people who were major producers, and he began to help set up some of those interviews. And I went out to Los Angeles with him one January. I don't know who we interviewed at that time. It may have been Mr. Lear, but we came up with our list. We did probably with Earl Hamner, a long interview with Mr. Hamner, and asking, you know, how did they do their work? How did they get into television? What did they want to do with it? How did they produce? How did they develop material? How did they develop their shows? Earl introduced us to some other people, and then Bob had done some work on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. So there were introductions to Brooks, Burns, and Tinker. I think Bob had done some of those interviews already. I suggested that we do, I don't know if I suggested or we decided to do some of the melodrama and action people. So we interviewed Quinn Martin, we interviewed John Mantley, who had done Gunsmoke, we interviewed Bill Link and Dick Levinson, who had done their social problem plays, and Columbo. And it was it was both fun and instructive. And so the book prints parts of the interviews. They're edited. Partly for length, partly because, as you know, interviews tend to ramble and get off topic, and all sorts of things happen. And we tightened them down. And then we wrote header introductions to those, which were effectively analyses of that producer's work. Again, from a kind of critical studies point of view. I wrote probably most of those and a substantial portion of the introduction to the book, setting out a kind of theoretical perspective on what it meant to be a creator in this context. Because what we were trying to say, and we used the term creative producers, lots of other terms, but these were people who saw in television things that could be done and chose to do them specifically. These were people who had, at one point or another, not dominated the schedule, but were prominent in the schedule. And certainly for Link and Levinson, or Levinson and Link, as they often wrote it, it was about their social problem plays as much as about Columbo. I mean, they had treated homosexuality, they had treated gun control violence, and done it in such a powerful way. And it was a real introduction to different kinds of creative processes.